Remember field trips and first dates? Generations have come to the Exploratorium to learn and play. Now we need your help, and every dollar you donate will be doubled. Sustain the wonder.
Welcome to After Dark Online. Thanks for joining us as we continue to explore our world through science, art, and conversation. My name is Sam, and I'm a program developer at the Exploratorium, and I'm beyond thrilled tonight to be joined by two incredible San Franciscans, James Q. Chan and Dorothy Quock. They are collaborators on preserving and amplifying stories of Chinatown and its residents. James is an Emmy-nominated filmmaker and producer, and Dorothy is a pillar in the community and an activist and a very in-demand tour guide who works with San Francisco Walk With Chinatown Tours. Tonight, welcome James and Dorothy. Tonight we're going to look at some of the films coming out of the new web series James recently launched, Chinatown Stories, You Are Here. We'll talk with Dorothy and James about how they collaborated on this and previous other projects, and take questions from you, the audience, on Facebook and YouTube. To ask a question or a comment, just go ahead and put it in the comment stream wherever you're watching, and our moderators will pick it out when we have time for questions. You can add your questions at any time in the broadcast. But I want to give a big thank you and a warm welcome again to James and Dorothy. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Sam. We are live in Chinatown, unmasked for the first time in a year. This is our reunion indoors without mask on. We're fully vaccinated.
It really does feel like an exciting time, and I'm again thrilled to get to have this chance to share some of the stories that you two have been working on together. And May is Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. So it's a time to reflect and celebrate all the contributions of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. But there's also an amount of grief right now. In just this week, San Francisco witnessed another vicious attack on Asian Americans in broad daylight. And in talking with James and Dorothy, we wanted to take a moment of silence to acknowledge the unforgivable violence and xenophobic behavior that has unfortunately been a part of our community. So join with us as we take a moment to acknowledge some of the grief and suffering of the community.
Thank you, Sam.
Thanks for being present with us for that acknowledgement. And James and Dorothy, what brings me hope, even when I hear bad news like that, are stories like these that you've been producing. Can you talk, James, a little bit about the inspiration for this new series and what you hope to achieve with it?
Sure, thank you. Thank you, first of all, Exploratorium, for having us. You guys were my favorite field trip in elementary school. And I still remember the tactile dome very much. Chinatown Shorts, we started this project about maybe 3 years ago, 2 years ago.
16, yeah. 2016.
So a lot of people think that I'm the memory bank. It's actually Dorothy who's the memory bank, keeping me in check. So I have to constantly refer back to Dorothy. So we started this project. It was a catalyst for a preservation project that we wanted to do. We wanted to document the stories of our neighbors. We both live in Chinatown. And we started one right after the other. And it was a response to wanting to document the human pillars in Chinatown. And we started working on a film before Chinatown Shorts called Forever Chinatown. And at the end of Forever Chinatown, we introduced community members, because ultimately the Forever Chinatown was about an artist who made miniature models of San Francisco Chinatown. And at the end, I didn't want to just end on his story, because I wanted to show that there are multiple entry points to San Francisco Chinatown. And so we started working on this together. Dorothy was my field researcher, and she would go out in the community and said that, oh, there's one person that you need to meet. Here's another person that you need to meet. And where it went from documenting a few of the stories, it went to flash forward to 2020. And we were in the pandemic, and it was our response to finish all those projects that we've started filming in response to the anti-Asian sentiments that was growing rapidly during the Trump administration. And as we see from this past week, it's a more frequent process, right? And it's deeply, it's horrific, and it's a visceral, it's traumatizing for me, and it's traumatizing for a lot of people in our community. And so we started this project as a gift to the community, as in, like, your stories matter. We wanted to validate them. And so with each story is a validation.
Well, even before the pandemic, I think your reason for wanting to do the preservation project is to preserve the stories forever. And that was one of the things that intrigued me and also fulfilled my dream of, I have all these facts.
Oh, looks like you've frozen on my end.
Stories, and so
You're back.
Oh, did we glitch?
Yeah, you were talking about preserving, you have your own record of facts and memories of Chinatown.
yes, and if I just have it on 3x5 cards and in boxes in my apartment in shorthand, half of the people who be looking at what I leave behind will not be able to interpret. And so James having me involved with his project will help preserve it forever in the internet. And it'll be available to anyone indefinitely, and it will keep adding different profiles and different people from our community that will be remembered forever.
Yeah, and that's what I appreciate about this kind of reciprocal collaboration that you two have endeavored on. Because like you say, not only are you rising to the surface these invaluable stories of people in the community, but you're also learning from each other, and where you can share some of your memory with James, and he can help elevate some of the people that you've met, some of the community members you know. And I'm curious, Dorothy, can you tell us just a little bit about your history? You were born in Chinatown, but you haven't lived there the whole time. Can you talk about, some of your history and what you encountered when you came back to Chinatown?
Well, I was born in Chinatown and grew up to be a young adult. And when I got married, that's when I moved away. So my memories are really up through to the early 20s. But I never really got to enjoy the city as a young person, being single and being out there. But coming back was one of my ways of finding my roots more deeply. And also I was still working for Walk With Chinatown Tours. And so I needed to be, on the premise or not having to commute 2 hours each way. So I'm glad I am back, because it's opened a new horizon, a new career, meeting James, to find out that the knowledge that I have accumulated, being a guide for over 30 years, that I have much to offer as well as much more to learn. So,
and not only that, but I have a sense that now that you're back, you are out there, as you say, in the Chinatown community, because I think, as we'll hear later, for about the future short that James will release profiling you, you're a bit of a fashion icon to some people in San Francisco. And I look forward for others to learn a bit about that too. But I think now would be a great time to jump in and give our audiences a little taste of what they can expect if they visit the Chinatown Stories website. So let's roll the trailer for season 1 of Chinatown Stories, You Are Here.
This is the first Miss Chinatown contest, and they really didn't know how to go about buying a crown. This crown is made of cardboard. It wore off after 60, 70 years, so I had to throw it away.
But now everything back to normal. Look like new.
我哋安熱交通，我哋又清潔，我哋住得好好。交租嗰度都話我哋好乾淨打理得，估唔到有今日要逼遷㗎。
And that's just a small taste of what people can expect when they visit ChinatownShorts.com. Can you tell us, James, how you decided on your subjects? I saw a really broad swath of activity and different people. How did you decide who to profile and whose stories to elevate?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Dorothy, the first person that we began filming was Leon's son, and he didn't necessarily live in Chinatown, but his work, he had common threads to Chinatown. He served the community through in the 70s, making social justice posters for the Asian American movement. And I connected with him mainly because I bought one of his art pieces of artwork, and he was such a fantastic human being. And that was an easier one because he was approachable and accessible. And I think with the other shorts, like the Master Simu Kuo, who is our Tai Chi master, Tai Chi instructor, she took a little longer to develop, even though that we were taking classes with her. She, mainly because I think in our culture, like traditional Chinese culture, you don't really share your story. You're told kind of like, you're told not to overshare, not to process certain feelings. And then there's also a part of it like that's cultural, where it took a little longer to develop the trust. And so for me, before I turn on the camera, it really is building that relationship, building that trust, and then being able to validate their stories before the camera turns on. And then in that way, we're able to then capture their story in the way that they want to tell it. And for them to share it with me is a gift. And then for me to validate their life story is a gift in return.
And also, usually it comes out in bits and pieces.
Yeah.
And I was thinking unexpected times that we are in class where we may be alone with her, or all of a sudden we hear her singing.
Right.
Or in her moments of frustration and anger, and telling stories of how it was so difficult for her to be a female Tai Chi master. And so we really didn't hear that part of it till maybe 6 months or more in being around her. So
yeah.
Many of the stories do not develop right away.
No. That's why later on you'll see the Penny's short is that you'll see a timeline in terms of her birthday year, and then what year she that we catch up with her.
Yeah, I love that the process itself is a part of what you're doing in this preservation of story, because through the telling of these stories, you're also building community and getting to know people on a much more intimate level. So what we're seeing as audience members is, as a finished product, is just one part of that. And I love that, again, you're able to get something out of the entire process, especially in connecting with these neighbors. And even showing that trailer, we're getting comments, "This makes me miss Chinatown. I'm so proud to be a Chinese American from San Francisco." And we even have one comment that we'll pull up on screen from Daniela Yu, who says, "I've taken that tour of Chinatown. It was amazing." So maybe Daniela was even on one of your tours, Dorothy, but can you tell us a little bit about the lens that you take on your walking tours and what you try to highlight when you talk about Chinatown?
Well, I not only cover history and culture, traditions, and of course we go into a temple for the religious part, but I also see landmarks and indications of social issues that have occurred through the decades. And I do point them out, and to find out that even myself in the earlier years of my tour guiding, that the Blacks were very much a part of Chinatown's history. And the monument on Portsmouth Square, in fact, indicates the first public school in California that was built by a member of the Board of Education Committee, and that he was probably the first Black who served on the city council as well. And it's just fascinating to find out all the different nationalities that were part of early Yerba Buena that became San Francisco. And of course, we just assume that Chinatown today is only Chinese, but there are many other nationalities that are living in pockets here and there throughout the community.
Yeah.
I was going to say, when I first met Dorothy and before bringing her on as a researcher, I went on her tour, and I definitely recommend people calling and going on Dorothy's tour, because it gives you a lens of beyond the Grant Avenue trinket stores, beyond the just the touristy spots. She actually processes it through the lens of a social justice activist. She would pause at places where on Ross Alley, and she went in on a whole conversation about the Manongs, the elder Filipino men who lived in the I Hotel. And so this was such a eye-opening, monumental tour that I was like, wow, this is a human unicorn. First of all, being able to then see other issues outside of just the storefronts.
Yeah, and I think to your point, Dorothy, it's so important to recognize the nuance and the dynamics of any particular place, that Chinatown is not a static place, that there is living history that's always happening. And as you point to, Portsmouth Square is one of those places. And I think this is a great lead into another short that you produced for series 1 here, James. So let's go ahead and roll. The film is called The Square.
The fire poppies, they grow and they bloom all along where things have been burned. So when I'm thinking about the protest, like, people see it as like chaotic, but like good things will come out of this, right? This is basically the whole image, and we're putting it here. As you can probably see, it looks like this. So this is where the fire poppy is coming out of the flames, and those are going to be the characters, and all around it is going to be black. Portsmouth Square has always been a site of resistance and demonstration. Black Lives Matter has a lot to do with Chinatown, because so many of the things that we have today, all the social services, the nonprofits that we have, wanting access to free healthcare, access to food, access to education, access to childcare, all of that has been inspired by Black leadership in the civil rights movement, by folks in the Black Panther Party.
Dozens of people grabbed paintbrushes to support the Black Lives Matter movement in San Francisco's Chinatown.
Juneteenth was commemorated with art, expression, and solidarity. The event was organized by the city's Chinese Cultural Center. They commissioned 2 artists to create bilingual murals in the square and provided supplies for others to join in.
So if you guys like, you can also create your own mural also.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, if you run out of paint, you can come back. Yeah, no worries.
Okay, let's find our spot over here, guys. Here. Yeah. And you can start on this part here. And then Lala, you can start over here.
I've never painted over pigeon poop.
Right now, we're in a very historic moment. Juneteenth in 2020, it's more significant this year because I think there's like a momentum, right? Like people are asking for like defunding of the police. People are asking for abolishment, and people are learning more about racism. Like we can't just like turn a blind eye to it anymore. There also needs to be a lot of healing done between the Chinese and the Black community to have more of a dialogue about trauma that each of our community have with each other.
We're really advocating for Asian Black solidarity. Our struggles are rooted in racism and discrimination, and it's really important for the Asian community to show solidarity in this time.
What we're trying to do today is like to have a dialogue with the community and like to listen.
Especially for artists to engage in this kind of activation within an Asian American community and an immigrant community, because so many times our communities are cut out from those dialogues.
It's not going to be overnight, and just this art piece is not going to change like, you know, a whole community's mentality. When we talk about political education, that has to be bilingual and it has to be accessible to our people too. And I just hope that in this moment, because people are understanding like the racism that came out of COVID-19, that they will understand like this is just like a little bit of what's been happening for Black folks for the past 400 years.
It's kind of this somber moment of reflection to think about the processes of justice and what it takes for people to be free, for people to recognize that asking for that baseline piece of dignity. If Black lives matter, then that means that Black self-determination matters, that Black creativity and control of their own futures and education and matters. So I think it's essentially a fundamental argument for undoing of many social structures that have been built up around anti-Black racism and trying to chart a new path forward that is actively anti-racist and work in solidarity with the movement for Black lives.
The week when George Floyd had passed, there were a lot of young Chinese American activists who were out there like translating coverage around the protests. Protests for George Floyd, protests for Breonna Taylor, and so many other folks who've like lost their lives to police brutality. And they gave him a Chinese name. And to see George Floyd being given a Chinese name was very significant because it means that he won't be forgotten, right, by Chinese people in America, and that we are also like witnessing and seeing this moment here.
The land of Castile, Eric Garner, Michael Brown, Akai Gurley, Tamir Rice, Walter Scott, Freddie Gray, Sandra Bland, Samuel DuBose, Mario Woods, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Rayshard Brooks, George Floyd, Mario Woods.
We're getting comments in the chat about how beautiful that film was. And I agree that one of the great things about the series that you two have produced is that it really is meeting the moment in so many ways, both in looking at the historic moments that have happened in 2020, this movement of solidarity demonstrated in Chinatown, but also in another short you feature about mutual aid and food delivery in the pandemic. Can you talk about about choosing to film this in this particular moment, James, and how you use the vehicles to really capture what's going on?
Yeah, I think it's all of our responsibility to be able to meet the moment. And I think 2020 allowed us to find our lanes. And for me, seeing like these young artists on the square, passing out paintbrushes, to stand in, like, to have Black and Asian solidarity in terms of artwork, in terms of like marching on the streets, that is meeting the moment. That is what we do as human beings when we see our neighbors and loved ones and in the community being wrongly, attacked, and it's systemic. And so we had an opportunity to actually start documenting these moments. And the food delivery was incredible because for both of us, Dorothy had to be sheltered at home, mainly because we didn't know what the pandemic or what COVID was, and we knew that it was just devastating. So Dorothy ended up pretty much staying indoors for
3 solid months without leaving the building. But I benefited from what was happening as well as, most of the time we would be searching out ideas or seeing where we can have our stories. And I became the story in the sense of getting the food that the community began to help seniors. And I think I was very fortunate that James had leftovers.
So to give context to the audience who haven't seen this short yet, it's called Aaron Lim, and the Aaron Lim short covers community responses as well. So not only are people in the community meeting the moment, we have social organizations in San Francisco, Chinatown, that actually pivoted from working with tenant rights advocacy to actual turning food community kitchens, working with the restaurants that were shut down during the early 3 months of the pandemic. And they revitalized these kitchens. They opened up food pantries, and then ended up pivoting from their role in tenant advocacy to actual food and food policies, and being able to literally hand deliver, mobilize the community of volunteers to disseminate and drop off food pantry items, as well as hot lunches. And so Aaron Lim is one of the community members who we heard about that actually took this moment, and he went and wanted to serve his 5 favorite restaurants in Chinatown, and with his own money purchased lunches to then spread it out to friends amongst the community in all parts of San Francisco and the Bay Area. And then he partnered with the Chinatown Community Development Center to then raise like $35,000, $40,000 within like 2 weeks to continue this food delivery program. Yeah, it's incredible. So we knew that we needed to just turn the camera on. We didn't have time to actually get to know Aaron for 2 years or a year. It was that moment. So we filmed within I brought on a talented filmmaker friend, Anson Ho, and he went out with his camera, documented 3 food delivery days, and put together a really tight, incredibly moving piece on a person meeting the moment.
Yeah, and thankfully, before the pandemic, but thankfully you were there to memorialize these incredible stories as they came up and came to the fore. And Dorothy, I'm curious, you're a fan of social justice and activism as well. How do you see the past connecting with the present and the future young activists in what we've seen both in Aaron Lim's story and in the square? Can you give us a little bit more background of what you've experienced through your lifetime?
Well, I think that it's really our youth that are going to carry on. And I feel I'm very fortunate that I've gotten to know some of the young people in Chinatown, and also some of them coming back to live in the community and be a part of giving back in their ways. After all, at 87, I'm not sure I could still keep up with going on marches and rallies like I have in the past, or to even advocate as strongly as I have in previous years. And to see the young people, some of them coming through to support the community in the ways that they're able to, like the square that we saw.
Yeah, and I think that's it goes both ways. I'm sure there's deep appreciation for you and your role in the community to encourage these young activists, and very much appreciate you talking about the youth as the future, because it is how change occurs. But I don't want to discount all of that you do as a pillar of the community. And I think this is a nice segue to another one of James's wonderful shorts about another pillar of the community, Miss Penny Wong, and see how she's also venerated as much as these young activists are. So let's go ahead and roll that short now, and we can talk about it afterwards.
I was surprised that I won because there were a lot of pretty girls there. They all had nice figures too. This is the first Miss Chinatown contest, and they really didn't know how to go about buying a crown. This crown is made of cardboard. It wore off after 60, 70 years, so I had to throw it away. Oh, the community was really excited. It's something new. Besides, we had no TV then. I felt that it was special because it was one of the first in Chinatown. I don't think anybody ever wore bathing suits except to go swimming. I'm right here, the blue swimming suit. After I won, I went out every night, partying, and that's how I got fired. Andy, when he came to see the Miss Chinatown contest, that day when I won, he gave a big party for all the contestants. A whole bunch of us went out dinner dancing. This is his Lido nightclub. At that time, he had about 4 or 5 nightclubs. It was fun living in Chinatown. There was no TV, so all they did was go nightclubbing. People were very excited about nightclubbing. Even myself, something new. I never got to bed before 5 o'clock. So you can imagine, I cannot get up to go to work in the office.
Welcome to Clarion's Dragon's Den. We're happy to have you here tonight, and we are celebrating Penny's 93rd birthday. So, happy birthday, dear Penny. Happy birthday to you.
I've been living here since 1960, and I think it's about 58 years. I have so many pictures. I change them every now and then, though. This is Jan and my son, Randy. Oh, this is my great-granddaughter. This is how she's a terrific dancer. One of our restaurants at the beach, we sold egg foo young sandwiches on a bun. Everybody liked it. And this is me when we were young. That's me. And this is my sister. She's always been one head shorter, even now, today. She's one head shorter than I am. When I was about 4 or 5, my mother passed away. I don't even remember her. After my mother passed away, they put me in this home, a Chinese Methodist home. It's made into a women's home now.
Hi, I'm Penny. You ready? How are you? Nice to meet you. How are you doing? Yeah, very nice. Please come in. Welcome.
Thank you.
That's the
I live on the highest floor.
The fourth floor.
The fourth floor.
I can walk you to there later on. Do you remember which room you stay at?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, the door is still there.
The door.
This old thing used to stay there, and I think we stayed here. Well, these missionaries took care of me. Every day, every breakfast, lunch, and dinner, we had prayer. I had no relatives. So they were my parents. Yeah, I'd like to know when I came in.
Okay.
Later on.
Yeah, later on.
I know they had a record.
Yes, but not much. But I found one. Your folder.
Oh, you found one?
Yeah, your folder. Yeah, you are coming 1931.
Oh, that early.
To 40.
1931? Wow.
To 40.
There's a lot of records.
Yes.
It doesn't show I'm a criminal, right?
Your father named called Lee
Toy Lee.
Toy Lee.
Yeah.
And your mother's a Wong Shi.
I never met my mother.
A friend of the Lee family.
Yeah.
He brought Betty and Dory,
Yeah.
Dory to the home of care and training.
Yeah,
Reason for their upcoming
yeah.
mother ill and the father were out of town.
Mm-hmm. We were lucky to get in other words.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I got a lot of letters, huh?
That's the letter your father wrote to the teacher.
Oh,
Your
my father had a good handwriting.
Yeah, she wrote to the teacher. You want to read it?
Dear teacher, I didn't know he could write so well. I am Penny's father. I heard of you want me to come over to see you, but I have to work at Oakland every day, and I am very glad of you and thank you to take care of my twins, girls, Penny and Dolly. Betty's mother was still sick at home. She will not get well yet. If she getting well, she might be coming to see you and her daughter next week. Hey, I didn't know my father could write. Very interesting. I learned all about myself, things that I never knew about. I want to show you, this is the home, assisted living home I'm interested in. And I've been to about 6 or 7. I looked into that because eventually I'll be old and I want someone to take care of me. And my I don't want my daughter to have to put up with me. Maybe I'm spoiled, but I it's when you get old, you really need help. Just like when I lived at Gumwood, it's like same thing. Only when I was at Gumwood, I was a kid, 4.5, 5 years old. But this time, when going into another home, it's senior citizen. When you're a child, you have that scary feeling, but as you get older, you know there's someone's there to take care of you. Then you have a very secure feeling. At least this way, I feel secure. Mm-hmm.
Gonna take a sentimental journey. Gonna set my heart at ease. Gonna make a sentimental journey to renew all memories. 7, that's the time we leave at 7. I'll be waiting up for heaven, counting every mile of railroad track that takes me back. Never thought my heart could be so yearning. Why did I decide to roam?
This is my apartment. This is the kitchen area and the living room area. And I'm sorry, I didn't make my bed today. This is the type of living I've always imagined myself to be in. Because when I was a kid, I lived in a Methodist home, and it was always something like this.
Sunday, 2:20 p.m.
Emily.
It's just me, just checking in to see if everything's okay.
Oh, that's my daughter. When your daughter tells you got to stay somewhere, I figured that she was being kind to put me into a nice home where I'll be protected and I'll be happy. We usually have a lady come in here every day and she makes my bed, but it's too early for her to come, so I'll make it. They have a lot of activities. I want to keep busy, not just, lay in bed all day long. And plus they let us play poker. That's what we like. Once a month is enough.
I want you to find out where you'll be.
The office.
That's right. You didn't. You do know. Okay.
Yeah, Rosemary's been here a year, and she really likes it here. I haven't seen her for years, like maybe 50 years. She's the only one I met here that I know.
Now you know where to go, just in case you need some kind of medical help. Yeah.
He's a doctor?
No, they call him med tech.
Okay.
And we didn't know we'd ever meet up like this.
Never. I never thought that you would be here.
Never thought you would be here. I don't care. My love waits there. Where? San Francisco.
I had planned on coming to these places long ago, and I like it, so I'll stay. I'm not a young old lady anymore. I'm an old lady.
San Francisco, your golden sun will shine for me.
Yeah, that film always makes me smile. And Dorothy, you're going to get the treatment pretty soon too as well. Can we get a little preview about the future profile that will be released as part of the series of you?
I'm not there's enough that I'm not sure what is going to be part of that, but I think James is hoping this fall.
Yeah, it's currently Dorothy's own episode. She was so gracious in allowing everyone else to go before her in the first season. Mainly also because I kept her busy. But Dorothy's piece is currently being edited by a fellow fantastic filmmaker himself and a frequent collaborator and good friend, Jeff Denbroder. And Dorothy had given me about 5 VHS tapes, and we recently got them digitized. And it was such a surprise, and it's a treasure trove of young Dorothy literally traveling around the globe, Tibet, East Africa. And so just to have like these precious archival footage is just a gold mine. But I want to give a special shout out to the Penny's family who's in the audience tonight, and Rosemary Lee, the fabulous Rosemary Lee, may be watching too. But there's also the music that came on Sentimental Journey was done by a great close friend of mine, Karina Denike, and she took a Doris Day song and made it sound exactly like beyond Doris Day. So, little plug. Karina Denike. She's a local fantastic musician, singer. And then the keys were played by Michael McIntosh, and they were fantastic on this. So thank you. But also Anna O, like one of the reasons why like I can't and don't want to tell and document all these stories. I can't physically. It wouldn't be possible. So slowly bringing in people to curate shorts for them to highlight and profile, and this short was done in collaboration with a talented filmmaker herself, Anna O, and she is probably out in the audience somewhere.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. I think it's such a unique structure you've set up for this, and I was hoping that you could talk a little bit more about your hopes for the future of Chinatown Shorts and where these stories will go and how they'll expand.
Yeah, so we ultimately want to root in San Francisco Chinatown for the first through the 3rd season. And we ultimately want to branch out to national as well as international Chinatowns around the world. And mainly because we know the specificity of our stories, the specificity of San Francisco Chinatown. But there's also like a need to bring in the youth and wanting to bring them in, to pair them up with other filmmakers and bring on other filmmakers to tell other stories. So there's a slate of next season. We have Dorothy's piece. We have one of my favorite one that's coming up is Kilu Nyasha. And Kilu is a phenomenal human being. She passed away 2 years ago, former Black Panther member who lived in the Pinyin Project here in San Francisco, Chinatown for like 3 decades. And so her story really kind of also connects the Black community and solidarity with the Asian community. So that is being in the process of being filmed this summer, going into production.
You know, I'm so glad that you highlight the Blacks in part of our history, because when I was seeing the square, it reminded me of the civil rights movement, of which I was very much a part of. And if it wasn't for the civil rights movement to open the doors to unite Asian Americans as well as many other ethnic groups, to take the courage that they had to find justice, and I feel like we need to credit the Blacks, the African American, to lead the pathway for us to follow. Because as Asians, generally speaking, it's part of our culture to be reserved, to be in the background. And I think the African Americans certainly have helped us to go forward with our needs and to express it in the community the way they have. And so thanks to them.
Indeed.
Yeah, very well said. And again, I can't express how much I appreciate both of you joining the program tonight to share all the work you've done to highlight these incredible stories. If people want to see more, they can go to ChinatownShorts.com and catch up on old episodes and be ready for when the new episodes drop that we've just been talking about. But before we close, there's been a lot of love in the chat for Dorothy. A lot of people saying how much they adore you. They say, I want Dorothy to adopt me. I love her. Lots of hearts, lots of well wishes. But also people are asking if the walking tours are still going to be available. And I would also, after you answer that, want to put out there to our local and national audience, how can people support cultural centers, cultural communities like Chinatown? How do you want people to engage with the community?
Well, first I wanted to say that Walk With Chinatown tours have started to come back again in terms of offering tours. And I understand from our president, Tina, that it's going to be an hour and a half, and it'll be only walk only because of the pandemic. And the size of the group will need to be no more than 6, I believe. But in any case, the website will give all the information for that. Anyone interested in finding out more about our community. I'm sort of semi-retired, but I certainly am still part of the team that will lead the tours. I also wanted to point out that we owe it to the community organizations that have grown. And James, you have mentioned the Chinatown Community Development Center. They've been certainly the spearhead for especially housing, which for them to contribute so much to the community in giving us not only more housing, but quality, and managing many of the affordable and low income, not only in our neighborhood, but really throughout the city. They have been able to purchase different properties and have it retrofit it or whatever is necessary for especially seniors. So, and of course, it was mentioned about Gum Moon by Penny Wong in terms of how she was helped in 1925. And of course, it even has a much earlier beginning than even Donadina Cameron House, which is another center that started out with helping women who were brought, or young girls who were brought over here during the gold rush years as pretenses to be picture brides, but it turns out that many of them were forced into domestic slavery and prostitution. So I'm very grateful that we have these different organizations that are picking up the banner for social justice.
And in addition to all these amazing organizations in Chinatown, Chinese Cultural Center, through artwork, Chinese Progressive Association, and also like if viewers are interested in supporting, like and to come full circle with the anti-Asian violence that's happening right now, is to actually speak out about it, is actually to continue like advocating for like continue dialoguing with it about this with your families and your friends, and don't disappear this. This is an incredibly horrific time, and I think the solidarity work would be contacting some of these organizations that are actually on the front lines, and contributing some dollars to them, and come to Chinatown, support the restaurants and the certain stores that are open. Yeah.
I was thinking especially the Chinese Affirmative Action, which is an organization that really is heading the effort to bring justice to not only Chinese but really anyone who needs help in the area of being treated fairly, legally as well, and with all the different, and especially for women, in addition to just in general, other nationalities besides when it began as just for Chinese, but now has expanded.
Thank you so much for sharing those resources with us. And I can see in the comments people are interested and would love to hear more. And I would encourage people again to check out Chinatown Shorts and check out the Walk with Chinatown Tours to be able to connect with Dorothy and other colleagues and local native tour guides who can help share some of this history and keep Chinatown going strong for the centuries to come. Thank you both so much for joining us tonight. James, is there anything else you want to share or say about any future projects?
Yeah, well, thank you, Sam, for bridging this connection with the Exploratorium. I think that's part of it too. If during this time, like the solidarity means that if those in the audience have the organization connection that want to connect with Chinatown, there are multiple other entry points besides us. So so thank you for this opportunity. What else? I'm trying to think of an update for.
Were you involved in another film?
That's what I want to give it a special appreciation shout out to you for doing this tonight, because tomorrow morning you're starting shooting on your latest production.
We start our it's a big 2-hour documentary for American Experience, and we actually start filming tomorrow. Tomorrow morning begins our production, and it is about the 1900 bubonic plague outbreak in San Francisco.
Which started in Chinatown. First victim.
Well, the blame was always on Chinatown, and it's the common threads to 1900 bubonic plague and COVID time is very much, there's a lot of similarities. There's the anti-Asian, anti-Chinese blame. There's the political fallback, the blame. Whenever there is a disease or a pandemic that we don't have information on, the knee-jerk response is always to blame that community. And so this film touches on that, but it also touches on the advancement of science, right? And how these two brilliant scientists came together and along with the communities helped the Chinatown community. So it's a murder mystery, science mystery coming next fall at this time, 2022.
Well, congratulations on that production. Good luck. And I'm so looking forward to it and getting to experience that. And again, thank you both for memorializing these stories, putting them in the context of history, meeting the moment, and really elevating and validating all the community here in San Francisco's Chinatown. Thanks again for joining, and good night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam, and the Exploratorium.